The world is getting crazier. People are acting more and more insane. The end of the world is tomorrow. Tomorrow. There's only one thing to do when the world is falling apart. Listen to Basil and Gonz as they discuss this week's news and events through the lens of Bible prophecy.
You are listening to Canary Cry News Talk.
Hey everybody, welcome to Canary Cry News Talk. It is July 10th, 2019, episode 147, the new world order. My name is Gonz. Basil is out for one more week, and Josh Peck was supposed to guest co-host this week, but Tom Horn had other plans for him, and Tom takes precedence over Canary Cry, and that's okay, so I will run this solo, and I'm also making this a video on the Face Like the Sun channel, so how's it going, everybody watching? Before we jump in, though, I wanted to mention HearTheWatchman.com. Go visit it and click on the banner for Hear the Watchman Orange County Disclosure on the Coast Prophecy Unveiled, October 10th through the 13th, 2019. I was honored to be invited by Mike Kerr to speak at the conference. Other people that will be there, Josh Peck, can't be here with me today, but he'll be there at the conference. Paul McGuire, Derek Gilbert, L.A. Marzulli, Russ Dizdar, Paul Begley, Troy Anderson, and Stephen Bankars, among others. So definitely check it out, hearthewatchman.com. And if you use a promo code, or I guess a discount code, GONZ20, that's capital G, ONZ20, you will get $20 off the price of admission, and there's also VIP passes for couples and other options. So check it out, hearthewatchman.com. Click on the banner for Disclosure on the Coast Prophecy Unveiled. So I wanted to start off by saying that I did feel the quake out here, the 2 days where we had the earthquake. I didn't actually feel the first one, but the second one I definitely felt, and it was a 7.1, I believe, on the Richter scale. Pretty shaky, definitely rolling around, and it's kind of an unnerving feeling, but I've been in plenty of earthquakes in my life, and it was nothing different from that, other than, hey, some stuff on the wall might fall. But there may have been a sort of a meta meaning to the earthquake, because so many things are changing so quickly. And in this week, the biggest news that's been out there is the arrest of Jeffrey Epstein, the pedophile, guy who's been flying around and flying celebrities around and doing all kinds of horrible things. Different takes from different people on that regard. Some saying, hey, this is it. We're finally seeing the teardown of these guys, or at least the people that are public with this kind of stuff. They're going to start arresting people. This is what we've been waiting for. I've heard others suggest that maybe this is more of a way to try to take down Trump. Like, Trump has an association with Epstein. And then there are others saying that that's, what they're trying to make it perceived to be, but there's nothing, there's all kinds of angles to this. My point is that this is a big story that's been hanging over us for a while. This guy, Jeffrey Epstein, and all of his dealings and, just his nefarious activity. There was a story out on theobserver.com that says Jeffrey Epstein borrowed tainted money from Deutsche Bank, says former mentor. And it states here, the origins of Jeffrey Epstein's financial empire remain a mystery to even billionaires. But the investor's former Wall Street mentor has one theory about how Epstein amassed his fortune: fraud. In a phone interview with Observer, Stephen Hoffenberg alleged Epstein participated in a Ponzi scheme. The two ran together in the 1980s before using the ill-gotten gains to launch his investment company with the help of financial loans from Deutsche Bank. Interesting, right? Now, Deutsche Bank, what's going on there? Well, we've seen the stock plummet for a while because of the news of the investigations going on with the manipulation of markets and things of that nature. Deutsche Bank's massive layoffs to hit Wall Street workforce. This is CBSnews.com. German investment banking giant Deutsche Bank is cutting itself down to a much smaller size. It's slashing its global workforce by 18,000 jobs, which will include cuts in the U.S., where it does much investment banking. As part of the huge restructuring, the bank will exit the stock trading business. That's a huge deal. So far we have Epstein going down, or being arrested, his connection to Deutsche Bank, which is going down, exiting the stock trading business. Are you kidding me? Deutsche Bank? That's a pretty sizable move in the traditional banking sector. And then we have this story that connects because, it all connects with the banking, the central bankers. Market Insider. U.S. Customs just seized a ship owned by JP Morgan after authorities found $1 billion worth of drugs on it. Federal prosecutors in Philadelphia have seized a container ship operated by the Mediterranean Shipping Company and owned by JP Morgan Asset Management. That came weeks after authorities found more than $1 billion worth of cocaine on the vessel in what was one of the largest drug busts in American history. At least a half dozen crew members have been arrested, according to Homeland Security investigations, and the investigation is ongoing. So there you go, $1 billion worth of cocaine found on a ship owned by JP Morgan Asset Management. Come on, the corruption is being exposed in the public eye. That's what's really interesting about this whole process. And, I think there's a correlation here, not necessarily a causation, although, with this kind of stuff, it all connects, right? I mean, I've always thought and have believed, and personally in my spirit, I believe it is something God showed me a long time ago, is that this all connects. And this is all being allowed, and we're going to start seeing more and more of it. The phrase New World Order, and the reason why I named this episode the New World Order was because one of the ideas early on when I started to research this material and share it with you guys, having conversations with other researchers, we talked about this notion that we currently live in a New World Order system already. And I think the proof is not just in the literature of years of, people, globalist types writing, their stuff, but also George H.W. Bush back in 1991 or 1992. I don't have the facts in front of me here, but this is the classic clip, and this clip I have has the eerie music behind it. If you haven't heard it, this actually happened. George H.W. Bush says that we need to build a new world order in a speech about a decade before the 9/11 attacks in 2001, almost to the date, I think. Here it is.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
I mean, the music is so great. The evil sounding thing, perfect. That really is this new world order system that has been ongoing, been building. Now, the question is, are we in one already? And I would say yes, because the United States was always made to be the new Atlantis. They were supposed to spearhead the new system. And so now that the U.S. has come to this place with Trump and this, this sort of tension with globalism and the liberal world order, as we will see in a minute here, I think we are going to start seeing a lot of shifting of gears, a lot of changing pieces on the playing board, manipulation of a different kind that changes the trajectory of society and allows for the people to build that new world order system. They don't have the workforce. They need the human population to be the workforce to build this thing. So that's what's happening. And I think the phrase New World Order is where we see evidence of this. And I've noticed in the last few weeks, we've seen an uptick in the phrase being used in headlines. And that's not a surprise. It usually goes through cycles. But of course, right now we have the G20, the Bilderberg meetings. We have these different things going on that would suggest that the phrase would be more used in more recent times here. But let me go through them real quick. CNBC, Trump is laying groundwork for a new world order built around the US, China, and Russia. Now you have The Economist magazine, globalization is dead and we need to invent a new world order. New York Times, globalization is moving past the US and its vision of world order. Investors' Corner, BNP, bonds and equities, a new correlation for a new world order. And then the Independent.ie, Geroid Keegan, central banker wanted, economists need not apply in this new world order. So what's the deal here? Why is this phrase suddenly surfacing in all these articles again in this cycle? Well, I think it goes back to something that was published a couple weeks ago by the Council on Foreign Relations. The world order is dead. Long live the world order. And it says here, the liberal world order faces a litany of challenges today. Instead of abandoning the world order that has served most of the world well, The United States and middle powers should seek to preserve and prolong that order. This was written by Stuart M. Patrick, and he says, the world is at a historic inflection point. Can the so-called liberal world order, which many believe has helped deliver 7 decades of peace, prosperity, and stability, survive the litany of changes it faces today? And how can institutions and norms that have long facilitated international cooperation function in an era that many see as defined by great power competition? To develop tentative answers to these questions, CFR hosted the 8th Annual Conference on the Council of Councils in Washington, D.C. from May 5th through the 7th in 2019. The Council of Councils. My goodness, the arrogance, the hubris is just overflowing here. So the 4 takeaways from this was, 1, the U.S.-led order is spent, saying that the Donald Trump rejecting all these things, this has stalled it. But this makes me think that this Trump thing was meant to be here, because without Trump really initiating the changes, none of this would have happened. Now, if you really think about it, I'm not trying to demean Trump supporters or anything, but the reality of the situation when you step back from everything is that this idea or this problem of, the small few, an elite, select few people are ruling the world through central banking and causing wars and this kind of thing, a truth, that knowledge is now being distributed to the general public, but it happened through the pipeline of politics. And so you have a left version of what's going on, and then you have a more conservative right version of what's going on. And for the left, the response has been democratic socialism and going more and more extreme to the left, and trying to bring that about, because I think for the actual controllers and the spirit of wickedness that really runs the whole thing, I think for them, it is much easier for that system to run, because in my personal opinion and experience and just, looking at all this stuff, it is much more easy to manipulate in herd mentality style that side of the aisle, or people that think in that liberal way, not the ideas themselves, but just the way it has been distributed, in the way that, media and technology have controlled the way they get the information. They are much more easily manipulated, because otherwise, how in the world are we in a place in 2019, 2020, where democratic socialism is being discussed as a real way to operate in the United States? Without mind control, like massive amounts of mind control. So that's what's going on the left, and they're moving more and more extreme. And then on the conservative right, the response was Trump. And Trump being, a catalyst or a guy who has been pushing for nationalism and preserving the freedoms that we have now. And those are things that definitely do matter if we are going to, quote unquote, globalize and everything's going to go worldwide. There is a place for this conversation to take place that, maybe the more conservative legal structures, although they also are definitely corrupt and definitely have problems, it's a better maybe way to approach the whole thing. But, those are philosophical arguments and discussions that have to take place. The order itself is going to continue moving forward with these 2 prongs fighting each other. And so that's why when I say, this first point, this first takeaway, the U.S.-led order is spent, it means the new Atlantis has done its job. It's time to tear down the new Atlantis to create the new Atlantis. That's the idea here. They need to always tear down and move forward, and change can only occur with tension. And this tension has been brought by Donald Trump, which is why, while there are positives to fight against some of this stuff, there is a larger overarching agenda spiritually going on here. So number 2 from the takeaway, the world order is cracking and there is no clear way forward. So a couple ideas here. Aside from U.S. neglect and abuse, the world order faces 3 main challenges. First, it does not reflect the new distribution of global power, talking about China and Russia. Second, the globalization is exacerbating economic inequality and financial imbalances, which policymakers are failing to remedy. That is very true. Because of the changing economic infrastructure that we've discussed on this channel with cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and all these projects going on as part of maybe being the thing that assists in creating a real economic infrastructure that is worldwide. And third, transformative technologies are disrupting labor markets and political systems. Same thing. These new emerging technologies with blockchain and all this stuff, it's creating a transparency where it takes out the middleman. And so that's why it's a double-edged sword. It's like, that's great. We're getting rid of the central banks. That whole system that everyone knows is corrupt, that way of doing things where an elite get to control the financial system of the world and distribute it and control nations with it and bring them to war, that whole infrastructure is exposed. It is failing and it doesn't work. Okay. And the people responsible need to go down. And that it goes beyond just the Clintons or, Jeffrey Epstein, these guys that are publicly being taken down, Soros, those other guys that are still out there. It goes way beyond that. I have always argued it goes up towards the spiritual level where cosmic forces of evil are really pulling the strings. But in terms of the tangible elements down here on terra firma, that system is going down, and we're beginning to really see it now, tangibly, which means some good, but also some difficult times ahead. I mean, it's all kind of together, and so we have to kind of keep watching, keep in mind that this is all part of God's plan as well. This is something that God is allowing to happen, and we get to actually experience some history here. But moving on here, number 3, middle powers need to take more global responsibility and buttress the world order. So as the U.S. takes a step back, middle powers need to set up to sustain the world order in which they are stakeholders. This can happen if other nations, again, when you look at the cryptocurrency world, you see how these other nation states have a chance now to actually have a say or be a force in the world economic order. They don't have to be in bed with the central bankers. They can create their own currencies and control it any way they wish and run it. But also, tie it back into a world system that's much more transparent with something like Bitcoin. Now, again, I'm saying that in terms of the positive and the negative. I'm not saying this is one way or the other. It's both, folks. It's really good that the central banking system is going down, but it's also really bad that these changes are going to be rapid, and that means some potential catastrophes along the way, which we want to avoid as much as possible. And that's why we want to try to inform people so that they can take the necessary steps to protect themselves and their families and all that. Moving forward, got me going on this one. Number 4, a failure of political leadership is darkening the world's future. Today's problems are linked to the current quality of global leadership. The presence of strong, principled, and effective leaders willing to do the right thing, regardless of short-term political calculations, is palpable. For many years, the U.S. has seen itself as an exceptional or exemptionalist power, able to ignore norms and claims to uphold much as Trump is doing now, yet the world order has survived. The current order is in dire need of repair, and Trump has identified many of its shortcomings. Okay, again, this is the Council on Foreign Relations saying this, okay? Council on Foreign Relations, quote, "The current order is in dire need of repair, and Trump has identified many of its shortcomings. His solutions, however, leave much to be desired. His ready, shoot, aim approach undermines prosperity and security. His administration's pursuit of narrowly conceived national interests is laying waste to world order." Of course, because they want the democratic socialism to succeed. Again, because in my opinion, it's much more easy to control herd mentality in the masses. But that's just my opinion. Later on, at the end of the article, instead of abandoning the world order that has served most of the world well, the United States should seek to preserve and prolong that order, the essential parts at least. And so there you go. This is the changing of the guard. And I think it all ties together with everything that I started with the Epstein story and the central banks, the Deutsche Bank and JP Morgan getting busted for this kind of stuff. That whole legacy system, I think, is just completely going to crash. It's going to go down. The dollar is going to go down with it as the world reserve currency. And that's going to be interesting. That's a change that is going to be turbulent no matter, what way you look at it. All the derivatives that have been inflated and created out of thin air, when all that stuff crashes, it was always meant to crash, but when it does actually crash, the big crash that everyone's been talking about for so many years, we are likely going to see it in our lifetimes here. And depending on the decisions of the people that are a little bit further down on the pyramid hierarchy structure, the people that actually have to press buttons to make things run, depending on how they operate, we may have very, very sudden changes, or we may have something that's a little bit more subtle and perhaps more effective in that people won't necessarily freak out over it and we won't have these mass chaos type of situations, which obviously they want some of that too. It's both. Again, it's not one or the other. They always just encompass both angles to this. They have both hands on the reins of society, so to speak. So with all that being said, I think that the stories that I want to get into now, which are a little bit different, a little bit more to the Canary Cry News Talk flavor, is important to keep in mind because they are going to be the topics of discussion in the future, but also massively important in terms of how we govern ourselves. Human government itself is changing with this technology, and we are living it, and we're actually participating in it no matter what. Even if you say, I'm sitting out, that's participating in it in a certain way by sitting out. So we're in this thing. This thing is invasive. And as Adam Curry said,
oh, it's a new world order. It's here.
Indeed, it is here. Now, let me take a breath here. How is this economic infrastructure going to be managed? What are some of the technologies that will be available to everybody, or at least to the people that can afford it?
Galactic clear essentially indicates...
Oh, there's tons of other solar systems. Space. Wanna go to space?
jpl.nasa.gov published an article, New Method Can Spot Failing Infrastructure from Space. We rely on bridges to connect us to other places, and we trust that they're safe. While many governments invest heavily in inspection and maintenance programs, the number of bridges that are coming to the end of their design lives or that have significant structural damage can outpace the resources available to repair them. But infrastructure managers may soon have a new way to identify the structure most at risk of failure. Scientists led by Pietro Milio of NASA's JPL in Pasadena, California, have developed a new technique for analyzing satellite data and can reveal subtle structural changes that may indicate a bridge is deteriorating, changes so subtle that they are not visible to the naked eye. Welcome to Skynet, folks, where the eye in the sky can see things that we can't with our naked eye, and hey, they're helping us because they can help us identify how to rebuild some of the failing infrastructure of old. And you can see how this all connects. The whole notion of space becomes even more relevant here. No matter what you think of it, I think this is really fascinating because I know a lot of people that watch the YouTube channel and that research and investigate this area, they are globe skeptics. Some are flat earthers. Many are skeptical of what comes out of NASA in general, as am I. So I think it's really going to be interesting to see how they manage to continue whatever types of deception is going on as NASA becomes one of just many of these private companies that are doing things in space. This is a CNBC.com article. New Virgin Galactic Chairman Chamath Palihapitiya says tourism space flights to begin within a year. Virgin Galactic is projected to become profitable in an annual basis by August 2021, new chairman Chamath Palihapitiya told CNBC on Tuesday, quote, "This thing looks like a software business under the hood, even though it's flying people to space," he says. Sending the company's first tourists to space is expected to come as Virgin Galactic gets ready to go public following a merger with social capital Hedosofia, interesting name, SCH, a special purpose acquisition company that Palihapitiya created. Oh, good. So Virgin Galactic, I think they've promised stuff like this in the past, so we'll have to see how, it really plays out. But I think we're close. I think we're going to have people that are going to have these experiences to quote unquote go up high up there. And, we'll have to see what happens then. I think it's going to be fascinating to keep track of some of this. And one more story pertaining to the outer space thing up there. PopularMechanics.com, space photographer snaps picture of secretive X-37B in orbit. Now, this thing was, again, it's supposed to be this reconnaissance plane that was supposed to orbit the Earth by itself autonomously, I think was the thing that we heard about before. But anyway, it was caught in some kind of video grainy footage there. I don't know how trustable it is, but again, tying into this whole notion of, hey, they're going to start doing stuff up there or staging things or whatever it is. What does it all mean? We always like to close with a Nephilim update if there is one, and this week there is. NintendoLife.com. Runbow Dev announces Dawn of the Monsters, a brand new kaiju brawler. Canadian developer 13AM Games has announced its third game, Dawn of Monsters. This title follows on from Double Cross and Runbow. It's described as a couch co-op brawling action game that takes up to 4 players on a worldwide tour of destruction. Players select an all-new cast of kaiju and must work together to defeat the Nephilim, a horde of monsters destroying the planet.
Nephilim update, Nephilim update, Nephilim update.
It's always interesting how video games use these names, and it seems to summarize all the nitty-gritty things that are happening all around the world. I'm going to continue the discussion on the extended report of Canary Cry News Talk, and patrons of the Face Like the Sun channel will also get the extended report for this episode as a little bonus in video format. One of the fun things about Canary Cry News Talk is that we are creating a collection of jingles that represent various topics. For example, we asked someone to make a DNA update in the style of AC/DC, and this is what we came up with.
'Cause I'm DNA.
Pretty funny. And we also have, for stories about surveillance.
Did you ever have the feeling that you were being watched?
And my favorite, which is of CRISPR-Cas9.
CRISPR. Cas9.
Yes, I was born in the 80s, folks. All right, one of the ways you can get your friends and family and coworkers and everybody to wake up to what's going on out there, you can shake them, you can rattle their cages.
I want to shake things up, stir up some controversy, rattle a few cages. Hey, stop that! You'll never silence me. I'm the last angry man, a crusader for the little guy. Leave the bird alone. Never. Rattle a few cages. Rattle a few cages.
Canaries in a cage.
Both canaries will be back in the cage next week. That's me and Basil. Thank you guys for listening. And until next time, think outside the cage.